We're going to try this, see if this works. There was a group of men who went hunting. It's getting close to deer season, you know. And they broke off 2 by 2s. And all of a sudden that night, they were all coming in back to camp or whatever, and they noticed that there was one man was walking with a deer, carrying it back to camp. And one of the other guys said, "Hey, what'd you do with Harry?" He said, "Oh, Harry had a stroke. He's about 2 miles back." And he said, "You left Harry back there?" And he said, "Well, I didn't think they'd steal him." Get it? They'd steal the deer, not... A little bit better. All right. Well, in life, there are always priorities. Whether we admit it or not, we all have priorities. They're the things that we hold most important. And my guess is if we think about it, we would put things in order, but I'm not sure that they would be accurate about what we really think is a priority. So I've got a couple pictures. Here's a man, I'm not sure, is that his bike inside with him? They're out biking? So his bike is inside the tent with him. But his wife apparently, well, what do you think his priority is? I'm guessing that's a pretty expensive mountain bike. All right, how about this one? Kate, you might like this one. Presented with her new baby. I hate to say how much I see something like this so often. What is she doing? Texting. You got to get it out there on social media. But that's her new baby. Where's her priority? Our priorities get a little mixed up sometimes, don't they? Whether we mean them to or not. Years ago, I was sort of a subscriber of Stephen Covey and the Franklin Planner system. And he said that, you make your to-do list and then you prioritize. So you put an A by the things that are the most important. You put a B by the things that are next important. And you put a C next to those things that, you can either do or, wait till later. Well, here's my issue. If it's on my to-do list, it's important. Everything was an A. Why would I have anything on my to-do list that wasn't an A? And so I went to bed almost every night looking at my list, realizing that I had not completed everything. I didn't get anything done, and I had worked so hard at it. So at night, I would transfer all those A's to the next day, along with all the new A's that I had, and the cycle just kept going over and over and over. Nothing ever felt completed. I didn't feel complete. It just became a difficult cycle, and life can get out of control. The reality is nothing on my to-do list has to do with relationships. It's all about what I need to get done. So as a nurse, it was all the things, I had to get the scheduling done and the budget ready and all that kind of stuff for the floor. Here at church, it might be the bulletin, the sermon, the Bible study, confirmation class, and I can do that. But at the end of the day, all I have to show is what I've done. I have nothing that talks about my relationship with God or my relationship with people. And I don't think that I am all that far off from others. In 1 Timothy, the caution that I sort of like, and I can sort of hear my dad saying this, is that we are not to be just, is that we often want more, and we're not content with what we have. Like if you have food and clothing, you should be content. But don't you think it's true that most of us want more of whatever it is? More money, more stuff, or maybe bigger? We can get lured into this idea that we need more in order to be comfortable or content. We need some sort of lavish lifestyle. And if by chance we've worked for everything we've got, not only do we want it, we deserve it. We get our priorities all sort of mixed up. That's sort of what happened with the rich man. He was rich for how we don't know, but living up on a mountain while there was were other people outside his gate, including a man who was so poor that he had sores and even the dogs were licking them. He didn't even know the guy was there. He was blinded by what he had and didn't even notice when there were people who didn't have things. So when he dies, there's the difficult story of he goes to the place that is very hot. But as he's looking up, he can see Lazarus with Abraham, and he's comfortable and cool in perfectly temperatured air conditioning with water. And he says, Abraham, if you just ask Lazarus to stick his finger into water and give me a drink. The only time he notices Lazarus is when Lazarus has more than he has. Our priorities often look to those who have more, and then we strive for that. How often does our stuff, our money, our priorities blind us from being able to see those in our midst that are in need? Now, we got to be careful because it isn't just about money. It's not that being rich or wealthy is an issue. It's how we use what we have. So there are many faithful people who are wealthy. But if you see the wealth as the source of your happiness, at what is going to give you purpose and meaning in life, you've missed the boat. The whole point of 1 Timothy, I think, here in our reading, is that our priorities need to be in order. And number one is what? God. I think all of us would say that we know that our priorities should be God. But if we really looked at our budget, or maybe not so much our budget might show it, but our actual spending might not. If we looked at your spending habits, if you look at your calendar and how you spend your time, if you look at all the energy you expound on whatever it is, my guess is that many of us, me included, God would not be number one. And we find ourselves sort of on one of those hamster wheels trying to find our way, spinning faster and faster and faster, when what we really need to do is slow down, get off the hamster wheel, and pay attention to our relationship with God. My experience, both financially and in everything else, is that when God is number one in my life, everything else sorts itself out. But when I am striving for something else, or I think something else has become important, usually something that is about me, because it's usually a selfish issue, I find myself back on that hamster wheel. And that's hard to say. McKenna Dawson last week talked about, in her sermon, talked about standing up, the courage to stand up for what we believe in. And she used the story of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, where King Nebuchadnezzar had built a statue of himself, and he was demanding that these three men of God bow down and worship this statue. And they say, no, we're not going to do it. We have one God. We're standing by God. We're standing up for our faith. If you put us in the furnace, even if it's 7 times hotter than normal, we are not going to give up our faith in God. And so they go into the furnace, and what happens? What happens, Victoria? They don't burn up, do they? I can't hear you fully. She gets quiet then when I say that. But they live, right? God is with them. They don't get burned up. That's right. They don't get burned up at all. And they actually see a fourth person in there, that God is actually with them. In fact, we're going to sing a little bit later, they see God. They see God. When we stand up and we are committed to making God number one in our lives, and then family and friends, and then maybe everything else, those priorities sort themselves out. But we fool ourselves in thinking that it'll just be for a little while that this is my priority. or it'll just be for today, and tomorrow I'll focus more. Tom Landry, I used to be a very big Dallas Cowboy fan. Tom Landry once was asked why he was such a successful football coach. And he said this, "In 1958, I did something everyone who has been successful must do. I determined my priorities in life: God, family, and then football." God, family, then football. And if you were a Cowboys fan back when he was coach with Charlie Waters and all those guys, you know what a success he was. In baptism, Angelo and Elliot are going to be baptized, and we are going to hear again those promises that God makes to us, to be claimed as his own, that nothing will ever separate them or us from the love of God. But there are also promises made. Promises to bring the child up in faith, to teach them the 10 Commandments and the Apostles' Creed, to have them strive for justice and peace, to bring them to the Lord's table when they are able, to be part of a community of faith that you are connected to, that will hold you up when you can't or they can't be held up on their own. We make those promises to put God first, because that is what God calls us to do, and that is when life makes sense. What is the first commandment of the 10? You shall have no other gods, and that includes yourself, which is who we usually put in place. So my prayer for Angelo and for Elliot and for everyone here is that we will look at our priorities. They probably won't quite look at them yet, although they might be. They seem pretty smart. That we look at our priorities and look at them seriously. What is actually your priority in life? Where is your money going? Where is your time being spent? Where is your energy going? And then ask yourself, what if? Because my guess is for most of us, that's not going to be with God. And that doesn't mean just coming to church. That means prayer, studying scripture, being with people, serving others. It's all that kind of stuff is when we're with God. My prayer is that you would then reprioritize and make intentional decisions on how you're going to use all the gifts that God has given you. Our sermon song today has a great first line that reminds us it's not about how much we have or how much we don't have. The song begins, "When the poor ones who have nothing still are giving." It is about doing the things that bring us true life.